Welcome to Goldfish on Games and a special cover disc face-off, where normally we care more about the plastic than the paper, but for January 1995, we have something special. Physical copies of the magazines and the discs in question. We have the one for Amiga, Amiga Format and Amiga Power, each of them having 3 discs as well. So this is going to be a jam-packed episode. Fight! Starting with Amiga Format. And as is typical with Format, one of those discs is something serious. Seriously cool, that is, as it's a copy of Amiga Professional, the programming language used for a number of Amiga games and PD titles. And in what's becoming a bit of a theme with this episode, we have to unpack it onto 2 discs, which is smaller than the 6 that the released version came with. So you will be missing a large number of the examples and tutorials. So I guess it's handy that they actually put a guide inside the magazine. This is a very impressive bit of kit, as you can code, edit sprites, and you can do everything you need to make a game all in the editor. If I got this back in the day, I would have been all over it. But coming at it in 2022, I'm a bit lost and I don't have the time to really get into it. So I'd really have to put in a lot of time to get anything really going. So instead, please enjoy the provided demo. The second disc also requires us to expand out its 2 demos onto separate floppy disks. I swear these magazines must have been getting kickbacks from those blank disc makers. The first game is Sensible World of Soccer, otherwise known as SWOS. This is a game of 2 halves. Get it? Get it? In which you can play either a friendly game based on the Italian leagues. They seem to be strangely popular with demos at the moment. And with that you get the regular Sensi Soccer gameplay, or at least as far as I can tell. My 7-0 trouncing to the AI really tells you all about my skills than any of my words. But there's also the management side, as SWOS also introduced its own management sim into the game, where in this demo you take control of the Amiga Format team, and you compete with all your favourite writers. And if you're better at the game than I am, then you can also take control of the team and play yourself. But if you have my level of skill, then you'll most likely want to let the AI play both sides. And that still gives me a 2-0 loss. Awesome. I hate to use the phrase, but if you are into that sort of thing, then you would have loved this demo. Personally, it's not moved the needle on my interest in football games. The next demo is ATV All Terrain Racing, and this is the second theme running through this episode, as it's a top-down racing game. And this one is by Team 17, and it gives you access to 1 map and 1 car, even if it teases you with more. Before you get into the race, you can spend some of your dough on upgrading your buggy. And then we're off to the races. Which is this very snowy map, with some very festive music. I guess it fits with the time frame really, doesn't it, when this demo was released. Thankfully the snow doesn't really affect your handling all that much, or possibly at all. And you'll be whizzing around the map at a decent rate if you don't hit anything along the way. There are these bouncing icons that a few of them do things I've not fully worked out yet, but there seems to be a boost, extra cash, and what I think is a repair for your armour. And it's also not a very long demo, even if it was quite fun. though you can experiment with all the different upgrades while you try and beat the AI and come in first. The final demo for Amiga Format is this AGA only game, The Lion King, that just dumps you right into the first level. No fanfare or anything. And if you've not guessed this already, it's a licensed platformer game as well. And one that was made by Westwood Studios, which helps explain those really nice animations. But also some of the slightly clunky platforming, as you have to land on these creatures just right for it to be classed as a hit. And for those spiky fellows, you have to use your cat's meow to make them flip. But you can only do that when your power meter is full, which is the one I think that's on the left, or it could be the one on the right. One of them is health, one of them is a power bar. I do feel they could have stylized that a bit more. It also feels like they could have used more of the AGA chipset's power to draw more colours, as there's a lot of dithering and banding going on, which isn't great for a machine that was quite popular with monitor users. Overall, it's an okay demo. There's this nice little secret that you can find that will give you an extra life. And then there's the boss fight. Finish that and, well, it just stops. This hasn't crashed. The magazine even mentions this, as they tell you you'll have to reboot it if you want to play again. Instead, I feel we should move on to Amiga Power issue 45. That also came with 3 discs, which was a little uncommon for them, as up to this point they like to try and cram as many games as they could onto a single disc. And please note that tagline, "Don't buy a turkey this Christmas." We'll come back to that. And with the first game being Cannon Fodder 2, which comes with 4 levels, but not just any 4 levels. These were made by readers of the magazine, who had to design their maps on graph paper, then send them in to win, quote, sensible and virgin stuff. I'd love to know what that was. So if one of you watching actually won this competition, I'd love to hear what it is that you got. And how close did that final level line up with your original design? As you might have noticed, these levels are all based on the Alien tileset and are very purple. Very, very purple. They are also very, very hard. Lots of turrets, missile launchers and pits for you to fall down. At least it's prepping you for the release product, as that game also enjoyed kicking your ass. If you've never played Cannon Fodder, then check out my review. I'll put a link in the description, as this is pretty much a straight follow-up from that game. All it really has is different environments and levels. All the core gameplay mechanics are exactly the same, to the extent that some of the magazines, including this one, called this an expansion pack, to which Sensei wasn't all that pleased with, and had a bit of a rant in the instructions for the demo. Whoops. I would have played the game either way, but I really wish they would have picked a better tile set for the demo, or at least had 2 different sets to give you a better sense of the overall game. The next game is Power Drive, and this is the second racing game we've seen today, and it's also the worst. Not by a little, not by a decent amount, by an amount so large we need to use the James Webb Observatory to see it all. You hear that? Yes, that is the music, and that is how it's meant to sound. And while the menus all look very snazzy, but it's all setting you up for a fall when it comes to the gameplay, as the first level has to be a winter one, and that means controlling your car is almost impossible. Even when it's not on the snow level, trying to steer that vehicle isn't the easiest thing, with it being sensitive to both over and understeering, but adding in those slippery roads and it's just a mess. And I get wanting to have a winter level in your Xmas themed demo, but save it for the second or third race. Give the gamers a chance to get to grips with the controls, so they can have a fighting chance against the lack of grip. If you do manage to get off that winter level, you'll find yourself in a race with another car and... where'd he go? Your chances of seeing him before you finish the race are almost close to zero. They even mentioned this in the review. And this is easily one of the worst demos I have ever played, as I cannot see me ever wanting to play the full thing. And I like to think Amiga Power included this demo to warn off players from getting the final game. As they did say on the cover, don't buy a turkey this Christmas. Thankfully the game on the second disc makes up for this, as it's Super Stardust, a game I have reviewed in the past, and of course I'll provide a link. As with quite a few of the demos we've seen today, this is clearly based off a mostly finished game, as the main menu is the same, the music is the same, and the first world is the same, and the disc itself is even copy protected. The main difference here is that it's only 3 levels that you can play. If you've not already guessed this already, this is a very fancy Asteroids clone, with all the asteroids being pre-rendered, so they do look pretty good. There are also lots of power-ups, including leveling your weapon up and the firebomb. And when you take out the weapons transport, you'll also get your second gun, the bouncer. Now what makes this special is that you can be leveling up the bouncer while using the 3-way, and then you can switch around depending on your need. Now finishing the demo might be hard as you only get 2 lives, though you might be lucky to find an extra one. And you'll want it as well, as you'll also have to take on the boss, which, like the asteroids, is this massive pre-rendered craft. Managed to do that, and well, that's it, demo over. I feel they might have missed the trick by not having one of the tunnel sequences, as that was more impressive than the regular game. And I did have a bit of an issue with this demo, as I had to remove my expansion card from my Amiga 1200, because if I didn't, it would crash, either at the start or end of the levels. But even with that minor annoyance, this is an amazing demo. The third disc is another multi-disc expansion, but with those in place you better grab your goggles, as we're going to be flying in Overlords. Now this is set during World War II, specifically during Operation Overlord. The demo gives you a few options, including letting it show off what you can expect, which is some really nice 3D graphics. Or you can play a few set missions, which are a mix of trying to take out enemy aircraft, destroying buildings, or trying to get out of a bad situation. You'll have to work out where your targets are by sight, and fly over to where they are, which might take a little while, so the action isn't always right away. There's also a good chance you'll spend all that time flying your way over there, and then you'll just get shot down right away. Or you might just mess around and go flying about instead. The game runs well enough on an Amiga 1200 and looks nice enough. And there also seems to be enough content for you to mess around with as well. And that's always appreciated with a demo. I do prefer flying around in space shooters than aircraft, but this was a fun, if a little complex little game. Thankfully the magazine does give you enough details on how to play it. The final game is Gunslingers, which is a quick draw type game. You have 2 players, both of which have their own key, and you have to mash it as quickly as possible when the game says draw. Draw! And that's it. In the final game you get more backgrounds and characters, but this is the extent of the gameplay. They call this a PD game, but it really feels more like a shareware title, as you have to buy the rest of the content, which I can't imagine many did. As overall it looks fine enough, and it would be fun with a mate for all of 5 minutes. And then you'd go on to something else. So all in all, a bit of a wasted disc. So we might as well move on to the final magazine, the one for Amiga. And this is also the only one not to need additional floppy disks to play the demos. Awesome. The first demo is Jungle Strike. Now this was the follow-up to Desert Strike, which got a very nice port to the Amiga. Similar to some of the other titles, this looks like it's based on a near final game, as we have the intro title sequence that leads onto a regular menu and eventually a full mission briefing. And once in game we find what is a decent port. But what does feel like a direct port from the Mega Drive. As Desert Strike used more of the Amiga's features like the half-bright mode that made that lovely looking shadow underneath the copter, but now it's just that classic checkerboarding shadow. It's also using a lot of dithering on the artwork, which really shouldn't have been needed on this AGA only game. But enough of the negatives, as the rest of this game is great. As there's more environments than Desert Strike, as it's not just variations on sand, and the missions themselves seem fun and interesting as well. There's also a little bit more planning needed, as you have to track down vehicles that might have the extra supplies, or you might need to make sure you're near a petrol station to fill up. But in some ways that's similar to the last game as well. This is also quite a sizable demo, as it has the whole of the first level, with all its missions. So that should take you quite a while to get through, between shooting down terrorist cars, to taking out their buildings, to having to save the various monuments. So all in all, it's a very good demo. There's also a bonus game on this disc, Magnetic Fields Battle Tanks. And it's a cracking little clone of Battlezone, made by the Lotus developers. This is that old vector graphics Battlezone, so it has all of these great wireframe models, which looks pretty damn nice. And on top of that, it's fast and smooth and fun to play. It's controlled via the mouse, that does take a little bit of getting used to, as you control not just the direction you're pointing, but also your speed. With a modern mouse, or a tank mouse with an optical upgrade, you can feel it's slightly oversensitive at first, but once you get a feel for it, it just clicks and works great. You fire with the left mouse button and you have limited smart bombs on the right. And it's just you against increasing numbers and difficulty of tanks. The only real question is, how well can you do on the 3 lives? Disc 2 is that old favourite, Holiday Lemmings. This features 4 of the 32 brand new levels that you could buy this year. And as with the other Holiday Lemmings, this is based on Lemmings 1, not 2. But it has been given a fresh coat of paint, with the HUD being touched up, and all those Lemmings having little festive hats. I'm not sure I really have to explain Lemmings, but for the 3 of you that's never played it, or at least watched my video on Lemmings 2 The Tribes, your goal is to direct these little critters from the entrance and get them into their Xmas pudding exit. And you have a palette of abilities to do that with. But the skill is when those numbers are quite limited, so you have to plan your route out. It's a great little game with some really fun puzzles. And the ones in the demo shouldn't tax you too much, but they will give you a nice taster of what you can expect in that full game. And talking about jumping to your possible death, the next demo is Base Jumpers. A game I've never really played, so this should be quite interesting. And there's a real level of polish in this demo. I really like that little parachuting effect. And the little animations as your characters run up to the building. And once in game it's, well, I wasn't expecting this, as it's a bit of a platformer, as you have to make your way up the building first. In what looks, and in some instances sounds like, a bit like Rick Dangerous. The jump takes a little bit to get used to, but once you do, it's a lot of fun trying to jump on the heads of those various guards, as well as trying to collect those little bits that fall from the screen, which can provide you with various effects, of which I'm still learning what they all do. And after outpacing the moving screen and getting past that pesky magnet, you'll make it to the top and you get to base jump off the building. And it's not just you that's doing this, there's also the computer controlled players who are going along as well, which is meant to present you with a way of getting some extra points by pushing them into a flagpole and the like. Or if you're like me, you keep knocking yourself into an obstacle and becoming red mist. But you know what this means? We get to do it all over again.
Yeah!
The final demo of this magazine and the episode is Super Skidmarks, which is our last overhead racing game, and is also the sequel to Skidmarks. And I know what you're all thinking, the name comes from that white knuckle turns and high speed straights of the game, and why the smart ones use the brown car. But no, the name comes from the cars leaving marks on the ground. Yes. This demo is a little light compared to the other ones they would release in the next couple of months, as I remember playing one that allowed you to drive around as the cows, which was a lot of fun. Where in this one it's just those buggies, and it's also one level. You can have multiple players, which is quite cool, but you will get bored of that track pretty quickly. But when you do so, you can mirror the track so you can shake things up a little bit. Thankfully the gameplay is a lot of fun, and if you get bored there is that mini Pong game in the main menu. And there we have it. What are the scores? Well, if I was ranking these back in the day, this third place would have been first, as it's Amiga Format, as I would have put so much time into Amos. The other demos were fine, but Lion King, that felt a little lacking. And Swoes, well, that was never my favourite series. In second place, I feel I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but it's Amiga Power. Cannon Fodder 2 was great, as was Super Stardust, but Gunslinger was a real letdown and was the only demo that was worse than Power Drive. So that means the one for Amiga has to be the winner. Lemmings is always a crowd pleaser, and Jungle Strike was a decent sized demo. And on top of all that, I didn't need any extra discs. As always, if you think I got this wrong, you can let me know down in the comments. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That might mean I need to get some new bookcases for more magazines, and this was Goldfish on Games. thank you for watching Cover Disc Face Off. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you should be able to find 2 other videos on the screen right now. Or you might even want to subscribe or even ring that bell icon, because that's what I've been told that you need to do. So until next time, thank you and goodbye.